Is this thing on? Hello? Hello? Whatever. We're live. What is up, guys? It's Alex Johnson here, the founder and lead analyst at yardsperfantasy.com. Welcome into the 121st episode of the Feed Me Fantasy podcast. Let's see. The fact that we're giving away our draft kit at yardsperfantasy.com for free this year is absolute insanity. What you're getting is rankings, research, strategy, projections, cheat sheets, keeper guidance, ADP risers and fallers, auction values, team previews, and more for free. Incredible. But I do want to get right into today's show, though. We've got a lot ahead of us. It's a long show. I figured it would be fun to go through each team and identify one stud, one dud, and one value. So that's what we're doing. But real quick, I got to remind you to take advantage of our promo code on Underdog Fantasy, where they just opened up a new tournament with a $3 entry fee. That's right, just $3 to get in. There's no rake and a $50,000 worth of prizes. Check that out and use promo code YARDSPER on Underdog Fantasy for a $100 instant deposit match. You can also use promo code YARDSPER on BetUS for all of your sports betting enthusiasts, and you'll get a 125% deposit bonus for any first-time deposit between $50 and $2,500. Take advantage of these deals right now and get on there, win some money on BetUS, win some money on your best ball leagues and Underdog Fantasy. That's promo code YARDSPER on both platforms. Anyway, like I said, I want to get right to today's show. We're going to start with the AFC East and the Patriots. Remember, it's one stud, one dud, and one value. Of course, we're keeping ADP in mind. So the stud for the Patriots is going to be Randre Stevenson. Randre Stevenson has always been in line for a greater opportunity in his second season after he played so well as a rookie. Now he has an opportunity to not only eat into Damien Harris's early downs and goal line work, but he's reportedly working in the James White role in training camp. Imagine this 231-pound behemoth catching checkdowns in space. Oh, baby. So the dud, we're going to try to do this rapid fire because, like I said, we got a lot of players to get to. 48 players we're covering today, so we're getting through this quickly. The dud for the Patriots is that aforementioned Damien Harris. Sure, I know the Patriots want to run the ball, but they did that last year too. And Harris was still a middling RB2 despite a near 7% touchdown rate. And it's also possible that they ramp up the pass attack in Mac Jones' second season and with a slightly upgraded receiving core. And as I mentioned with Stevenson, Harris will likely be ceding additional work to the Patriots' second year back. It's hard to see a path to anything close to his 2021 production. The value for the Patriots is Devontae Parker. He's been lighting up Patriots training camp. He's seeing downfield looks from Mac Jones, and he's become the favorite red zone target for the sophomore quarterback. We've seen a healthy and motivated Parker, what he can do in the past. It seems like he may be back to that level with his new team. Moving right along, the Buffalo Bills, the stud, of course. The stud is Josh Allen. He was the QB1 in 2021 in both total points and on a per-game basis. He's easily the top-ranked quarterback in 2022. And not only does he have a cannon arm and the weapons to take advantage of that arm, but his rushing ability gives him a high floor week to week with an insane ceiling. The dud, you already know it. If you follow me at all, you already know the dud that I'm going to talk about for the Buffalo Bills. And remember, this is at ADP. This is considering ADP, and it's Gabriel Davis. You'll never catch me drafting Gabriel Davis as high as he's going in some of these drafts. On Underdog in particular, he's going in like the 4th round as a top 24. I believe he's now creeping into the top 20 among wide receivers on Underdog Fantasy. That's insane. I don't care that he had one insane playoff game last year. I don't care. That just doesn't rationalize taking him ahead of some of these proven studs that he's going ahead of. This is a guy who in 2 seasons in the NFL has never reached 65 targets. He's never had more than 35 receptions in a season. And he's never even reached 600 yards. I mean, come on. He had a target share of just 10.9% in each of his first 2 seasons. And in 2021, Davis ranked 67th among all wide receivers in playerprofiler.com's route win rate metric, meaning that 66 wide receivers across the NFL, that's more than 2 per team, were better on their routes than Gabriel Davis. The Gabriel Davis truthers, they tried to make up excuses for his lack of involvement in the offense, like arguing the reason he wasn't on the field was because of Emmanuel Sanders. Really? You're using this much draft capital to get a guy who can't even beat out Emmanuel Sanders? Come on now. The value on the Buffalo Bills is Stephon Diggs. He's a stud. I could have easily put him instead of Josh Allen. I could have put Stephon Diggs as the stud for the Buffalo Bills. There's really no debate about how good he is. In what was widely considered a down year for him last year, Diggs still had a good season. He's still ranked top 5 in targets, top 5 in air yards, in red zone targets as well, while commanding a healthy 26.4% target share. He finished the year with 103 receptions for 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. If that's a down season, I can't imagine what a bounce back would look like in 2022. He's the value here because while we have him ranked as a mid-first rounder in the yards per fantasy draft kit, his ADP has been slipping to the 2nd round on Sleeper. So go draft Stephon Diggs with confidence as early as the middle 1st round. And you can find that draft kit at yardsperfantasy.com/draft-kit. Let's move to the Jets. The stud on the Jets. It's hard to find a stud on the Jets, but there is one that stands out, and that's Elijah Moore. He was incredibly impressive during his healthy games as a rookie. Despite missing 6 contests and not exactly having the best quarterback situation, Moore still managed over 500 receiving yards on 43 receptions. It all culminated in overall wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 3 performances in weeks 9 and 11, when he combined for 225 yards and 3 touchdowns on 15 receptions. He's the locked-in alpha in the passing game and what should be an improved Jets offense. The dud is Garrett Wilson. I do like Garrett Wilson, but the Jets, they selected him top 10. That's awesome, and I like him. However, with Elijah Moore taking on the role as the alpha and Corey Davis just 1 year removed from a significant free agent contract, Wilson seems securely in the number 3 chair among the Jets receivers. That's not exactly great news in an offense that appears set to feed their rookie running back and is leaning on a bell cow in their offense and a below average quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate Wilson's talent and expect he will have a very successful NFL career, but the stars don't seem aligned for him to break out as a rookie. That's it. I'm drafting him in Dynasty all day long. I just don't know if I can get there this year. The value is that aforementioned stud bell cow in the backfield that the Jets are going to be leaning on. It's Breece Hall, the rookie. They traded up in the draft to draft the number 1 back in the class in the early second round. Hall's an incredible athlete with elite size adjusted traits. He's an excellent fit in the outside zone running scheme, and he's going to easily supplant Michael Carter to become the 3-down bell cow. Michael Carter is going to get some work early in the season, but by the time we get to October, it's going to be all Breece Hall in that backfield. He can absolutely be your anchor running back if you start your draft wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. I would certainly prefer Hall over someone like James Conner. Let's move to the Dolphins to wrap up the AFC East. The stud on the Dolphins. I thought about putting him as the value. I originally had him as the value, but I couldn't really think of a stud that I was confident in. I couldn't say I'm confident in this guy being a stud other than Chase Edmonds. He's in line to be the top dog in the Dolphins backfield. We all think of him as this excellent receiving back, which he is, but he's been efficient in all areas throughout his career. Taking on a bigger role last year in Arizona, Edmonds finished top 12 in evaded tackles per touch and breakaway run rate. He was also top 10 in true yards per carry and yards per touch, and those are per playerprofiler.com. He's a good fit in the Kyle Shanahan-style outside zone running scheme that Mike McDaniel and company are going to deploy in Miami. The Dolphins upgraded the offense across the board with improvements on the offensive line, as well as the additions of Tyreek Hill and then Edmonds himself. So we can project a more efficient unit than what we saw a year ago. Are we really worried about the other running backs on that roster? Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert, Myles Gaskin? No. Edmonds is an incredible value at ADP. Like I said, he could have been the value for the Dolphins, but I think he's also the stud. And the dud is going to be Tyreek Hill. I'm about a full round below consensus on Tyreek Hill this year. And let me just remind you that this is in reference to ADP, where I say dud. I don't think Tyreek Hill's going to have a terrible season, but I think he's going to have a hard time producing up to that ADP. But anyway, I'm a full round below consensus on Tyreek this year. It's not so much about Hill himself. He's still one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. There's no debating that. But the situation is concerning considering we have to use substantial draft capital in order to get him. He has gone from the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs to the Tua Tagovailoa Dolphins. This is the same Tua who threw 16 touchdowns in 13 games last year. It's the same Tua that ranked 31st in air yards per attempt, according to playerprofiler.com. Tua will not allow Hill to reach his maximum ceiling like Mahomes was able to unlock. I can't see a world where both Hill and Jalen Waddle are commanding high target shares and racking up fantasy points. So the value, as I just, after I just trashed Tua Tagovailoa, of course, I'm going to talk about Tua as the value here. It makes a lot of sense, right? But that's what I'm doing. Whatever. To be honest, he's only here because there aren't any other options to choose from, really. That's it. He has an ADP of QB 16, so it doesn't really cost much to acquire him. He does have an upgraded supporting cast around him with the additions of Teron Armstead on the offensive line, Hill at wide receiver, Edmonds in the backfield. The Dolphins have done as much as they can to set up Tua for a good season. We'll see if he can actually get it done. Let's go from the AFC East to the AFC North. In the stud, of course, is Deontay Johnson. He's the stud. He finished as the wide receiver 8 and 21 with Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. That's really all you need to know about how good he is. With Ben Roethlisberger, the end of career, noodle-armed Ben Roethlisberger, Deontay Johnson still managed to finish as a top 10 wide receiver. He finished second in targets, fifth in receptions, ninth in receiving yards, sixth in yards after the catch. He was an absolute stud. He's the best player on that Steelers offense. Just draft him. Just draft him. The dud, there are a couple guys I could have chose from. I thought about Chase Claypool, but I went with Pat Freiermuth, the tight end. He averaged 9.5 fantasy points per game as a rookie to finish as the tight end 16 in fantasy points per game. That mostly came on the back of 7 scores and a 12% touchdown rate, thanks to his 20 red zone targets. It's going to be hard to improve on that with the target competition he faces in Pittsburgh, especially with the addition of rookie George Pickens, who will undoubtedly eat into that red zone share. Speaking of George Pickens, he has looked like an absolute stud during training camp and preseason. He's the value here, by the way. He was a stud at Georgia, too. He led the Bulldogs in receiving yards and touchdowns as a true freshman at age 18. But after an underwhelming 2020 season and a lost 2021 season due to injury, he fell off the radar, a little bit. He's going to be the Steelers' number 2 wide receiver before long, and probably it's going to happen this season. Pittsburgh is notorious for developing wide receiver talent, and Pickens has about as high of a ceiling as any of the other wide receivers in this 2022 rookie draft class. He'll be especially dangerous in the red zone, where he can take advantage of his size, his catch radius, and ability to win in contested situations. His ADP is on the rise, but considering what he can do, there's still plenty of value to be had. So I'm comfortable listing him here as the value, despite what he's been doing. And if you follow me, you follow yards per fantasy, you were already on George Pickens. You already knew that he was good. We talked about him in the offseason. You read our rookie draft guide. You already knew he was in line. If you go back to my write-up, my post-draft analysis on George Pickens in the Yards Per Fantasy Ultimate 2022 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, you'll see that I even said he's probably eventually going to take over the wide receiver 2 job behind Deontay Johnson and ahead of Chase Claypool. That was months ago. I published that right after the draft, a week after the draft. I said that. That was back in May. And here we are. The rest of the world is now coming on to George Pickens. We were already on him. And I'm proud of that. But let's go on to the Ravens. The stud on the Ravens, no brainer. Lamar Jackson. We already know how good he is. As long as he's healthy, he's a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. I'm not even going to talk about him anymore because it's a no-brainer. It's obvious. The dud, and like I have to remind you again, this is considering ADP only. The dud is Mark Andrews. This is more of a case where there really isn't a good option to choose from as a bust. There's not a bust on the Ravens. So I had to choose somebody. It's going to be Mark Andrews. I certainly don't think he's going to have a bad season, but I could argue that he's being drafted too high. That's it, plain and simple. He was the tight end 1 last year, thanks in part to the Ravens needing to pass the ball 10 more times per game than we've seen in any other time in the Lamar Jackson era. That was because the team was riddled with injuries in both the backfield and the secondary. So not only did they struggle to run the ball, but they were often in shootouts or playing from behind because their defense couldn't stop anybody. So of course they're going to throw the ball 10 more times per game. Obviously. But anyway, so not only did they struggled to run the ball, they couldn't keep up with the opposing offenses. So now they've upgraded the secondary. The running backs are trending towards being healthy for the start of the season, at least J.K. Dobbins. The Ravens also went out and they drafted 2 offensive linemen, 2 tight ends, and a running back in the draft. That's just another indication that the team wants to get back to running the football. Not to mention, Rashad Bateman is back healthy, which will only make it harder for Andrews to command the same high-value target share that he saw last season. And speaking of Rashad Bateman, he's going to be the value for the Ravens. He just might be the most obvious wide receiver breakout candidate in 2022. He struggled with injuries as a rookie, but we have to remember this was a dominant college producer. Again, this is why you got to follow us all throughout the offseason, because going back to last year's draft kit, we were very, very, very high on Rashad Bateman from a dynasty perspective coming out of college. He has the size and the skill set to be the true alpha wide receiver in the Ravens offense. Marquise Brown is gone, leaving just Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, Tylan Wallace, and Benjamin Victor on the wide receiver depth chart. Obviously, Rashad Bateman is going to produce in that environment. Moving to the Browns, the stud is Amari Cooper. Will Deshaun Watson play? Will Deshaun Watson not play? Who knows? Either way, Amari Cooper is set to be the alpha in the Browns pass attack. If he has Watson at quarterback, he'll get a ton of volume and he'll be efficient. If it's Jacoby Brissett back there, the efficiency will be down, but he will still be the guy that Brissett locks in on and just peppers with targets. The dud, pretty easy. The dud is Kareem Hunt. He's sharing a backfield on what's likely going to be a Jacoby Brissett-led offense. That's if he even plays for the Browns this year, considering he's looking for either a new contract or to be traded to a team that's going to give him one. There's just too many unknowns with Kareem Hunt right now. And he's going in the middle rounds. I'm staying away. I'm staying away. The value on the Browns is David Njoku. He just got paid. The team has given every indication that they plan on utilizing their former first-round tight end in a significant role this year. Njoku, he's an athletic freak who also, he flashed big game potential over the last couple of seasons. His 7-catch, 149-yard outing against the Chargers last year in Week 5 is really all we need to know about the upside of a guy like Njoku if he finally puts it all together in his age 26 season. Keeping it moving here. The Bengals, the stud. You'd think I'd talk about Jamar Chase, but you're easy stud there with Jamar Chase. My stud is going to be T. Higgins. T. Higgins' 17-game pace last year would have given him over 1,300 yards receiving. The Bengals are pretty consolidated offense for fantasy with Chase, Higgins, Tyler Boyd being the only significant options in that passing game. The dud's going to be Joe Burrow. He's being overdrafted in some leagues, plain and simple. Even with all the weapons available to him, Burrow was still only the QB 10 in fantasy points per game last season. And yet he's often being drafted ahead of someone like Trey Lance, whose rushing ability unlocks a much greater ceiling than a pocket passer like Joe Burrow. He's going to have a good season. And it's not a bad pick by any means. He's not a bad pick. Just be wary of how high you take him. Waiting to take, like a Derek Carr or a Kirk Cousins multiple rounds later is probably the way to go. The value, and I've talked about him several times. You can probably already predict it if you follow me at all. The value on the Bengals is my boy, Chris Evans. Evans was underutilized in Michigan before being a 6th-round pick last year with the Bengals. He's incredibly explosive. He's agile. We saw that in his breakaway run in Week 1 of the preseason, which was called back, by the way. But he showed it. And as a rookie, he flashed his receiving skills. He caught 15 of his 17 targets, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. We know Joe Mixon is not this guy who has stayed healthy throughout his career. So it's just Samaje Perine standing in the way from Chris Evans getting that RB2 job and becoming one of the most valuable handcuff running backs in all of fantasy football. And like I said, if anything happens to Joe Mixon, he's going to be the guy in that offense. He's going to have the passing downs work. He's got the all-purpose skill set. Oh, man, Chris Evans, I love him. Like I said, he could be one of the most valuable handcuff running backs if he ends up with that RB2 job. And Zach Taylor, he's already acknowledged that this is a competition between Perine and Evans. The job is open. The door is open for Chris Evans. I like him a lot. I'm drafting him so much. He is my most rostered running back on Underdog Fantasy, promo code yards per. Moving to the AFC West, we're going pretty good pace here. I'm trying to keep this going quickly because we're getting to a lot of players. Like I said, we're going to talk about 48 players today. I think we're already about halfway through, right? Anybody keeping track? Let me know. Let me know in the chat. The stud on the Chargers is Mike Williams. He's a no-brainer pick in the 4th round. We're talking about a featured wide receiver and one of the top passing offenses in the league. He's coming off career highs in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. And that's partly because a new coaching staff came in last year who actually knows how to use him. He was seeing more looks close to the line of scrimmage, which made his game more efficient all the way around. And Williams still got that work down the field, though. He's still that guy down the field. He's just getting more opportunities underneath. He was top 12 in deep targets. Justin Herbert often looked his way in the red zone, and he finished 8th among all wide receivers in red zone targets. He's a perfect skill set match with Justin Herbert, and he's an excellent complement to Keenan Allen's game as well. Just don't overthink this one. Just draft Mike Williams. The dud. This is a tough offense to find a dud. I went with Gerald Everett. I'm not sure if he really qualifies to be a dud, given his low ADP already. So there's not really super high expectations. However, there is a chance that he can't capture that full tight end 1 role in Los Angeles thanks to the lingering Donald Parham in the background. Like I said, it's hard to pick a dud from the Chargers. It's going to be a great offense. It's a consolidated offense, which we love for fantasy. I just had to pick somebody, so I went with Everett. The value on the Chargers, this is another guy I've talked about a few times, is Josh Palmer. He quietly started to come on late last year in his rookie season. Over the last 5 weeks, he earned a 14% target share while averaging 27 routes per game. He also scored double-digit fantasy points in 3 of those contests while finishing as the wide receiver 16, wide receiver 21, and wide receiver 32 in those games. He'll look to build on that in 2022 as he fights to secure the full-time wide receiver 3 role in training camp. That puts Palmer in an excellent position to be a productive fantasy asset as the wide receiver 3 and one of the most explosive pass offenses in the NFL. Sure, he'll work behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but the team doesn't have an established tight end. You know, like I said, it's kind of a competition right now with Everett and Parham. So there's not much competition behind Palmer either. Wide receivers, Jalen Guyton. I've heard DeAndre Carter is impressing in training camp. But, I mean, it's DeAndre Carter. I mean, are we really that threatened by him? And if anything were to happen to either of those top 2 wideouts, now you have the wide receiver 2 in the Justin Herbert offense. Draft Josh Palmer. He's a great value. Moving on to the Broncos, the stud is my guy, Cortland Sutton. I am all in on Cortland Sutton this year. It's well documented. I've written articles. I've made multiple TikTok videos talking about Cortland Sutton. I've tweeted about him. I'm all in on Cortland Sutton. If he can be a top, if he can top 1,100 receiving yards with a combination of Drew Lock, Joe Flacco, and Brandon Allen at quarterback, imagine what he's going to do in the DK Metcalf role with a new quarterback and Russell Wilson. Even last year, coming off the ACL injury, Sutton led the team in targets and receiving yards. And the peripheral numbers were encouraging too. He finished the season 8th in air yards, 5th in unrealized air yards, 2nd in average target distance, and 6th in deep targets, according to playerprofiler.com. He's going to be targeted down the field. He's going to be targeted down in the red zone. He's going to have those high-value opportunities. He's got a great quarterback to deliver him the football. There's going to be efficiency. It's going to be great offense. I'm excited for Cortland Sutton. So quality quarterback play. He's going to be one of the more productive wide receivers in the NFL this year. The dud. This one hurts me to talk about, and it makes me want to remind you again that this is all about ADP. When I talk about the duds, this is all about ADP because don't get me wrong, I love Javonte Williams. However, we cannot just wish him into a bell cow role. I have said that a million times. I was as upset as anyone when the team brought back Melvin Gordon. I have a ton of Javonte in Dynasty, and I was really excited about him being unlocked this year. So I was frustrated by that signing too, but we have to accept it and not pretend that it didn't happen. And that's what a lot of people who are drafting Javonte in the 2nd round are doing. They're pretending that Melvin Gordon didn't happen. They're ignoring Melvin Gordon still being there. As long as Gordon is on the roster and he's healthy, Williams will be unable to return value at that 2nd round ADP. This was a 50-50 split last year. Even if Williams takes a bit more out of that pie, it's unlikely to be enough to warrant his current cost in drafts. And the value, I talk about the Broncos a lot, don't I? Because this is another guy who's well documented. I'm all in on the Broncos offense this year. My value is Mr. Albert Ukwebunam. And yes, that is how you say his name. Just look it up on YouTube. He himself pronounced it in a video when he was back at Missouri. It's Albert Ukwebunam. He's my favorite breakout tight end for 2022. The road to fantasy production has been absolutely paved for this guy from the departure of Noah Fant, the loss of Tim Patrick to an ACL injury, to the upgrade at quarterback, is all there for Alberto to be productive. He's an athletic freak, 6'6", 258 pounds with 4.48 speed. I just cannot emphasize that enough, how incredible that is, that a guy of this size can run that fast. It's absolutely incredible. This guy's almost 260 pounds, 6'6", sub 4.5 speed. There are so many highly productive and fast wide receivers in the NFL who can't run that fast, that are 190 pounds, and they can't run that fast. It's absolutely incredible. And even while playing behind Noah Fant last year, Alberto, he finished as a tight end 1 twice, and he was inside the top 25 another 8 times. That's being a backup tight end, finishing as a top 25 guy. And his rate of targets per route was 29.9%. He's a beast after the catch too. In limited opportunities, he's still ranked top 15 among all tight ends with 255 yards after the catch. And now he gets to play with Russell Wilson at quarterback in an offense that projects to be among the highest scoring in the league. Ukwebunam will present a fantastic weapon down the seams, underneath, and in the red zone for his new quarterback. He's going to be the third option in the passing game behind Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. And I just find it hard to imagine that he doesn't score as a top 10 tight end this year. Let's keep going. As much as I want to keep talking about Alberto and Cortland Sutton, I could talk about those guys all day long. Let's move along to the Raiders. The stud, easy, Davante Adams. He may not be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy anymore, but he's still in the conversation to be in the top 5. The quarterback change from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr really shouldn't impede him from producing elite numbers. I'm still drafting him at the back end of round 1 with confidence. That's really all we have to say on Davante Adams. He's a stud. We know it. Keep moving. The dud may surprise you. The dud I'm picking for the Raiders is going to be Hunter Renfro. Renfro, I know he took full advantage of the situation in Vegas last year, but that's part of the problem, is he was taking advantage of the situation in Vegas last year. It was an offense void of talent while Darren Waller battled injuries. I think he missed the entire month of December. And then Henry Ruggs got kicked off the team. And even still, Hunter Renfro was outproduced by Zay Jones down the stretch. It was like a 20 yard, 22 yard per game difference between Jones and Renfro over the last 5 games last year. And a lot of Renfro's fantasy production came on the back of his 9 touchdowns, while he was 6th among all wide receivers in red zone targets. And that's not going to happen again. It's just not going to happen again with the return of a healthy Waller and the addition of Davante Adams. Those red zone targets are going to those big behemoths, not little Hunter Renfro. Sorry. Renfro is still going to be productive. Don't get me wrong. He's going to be productive. He's going to have a solid season. But we just can't expect 103 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns again. We're looking more at like 75 catches, 800 yards. I think that's reasonable projection for Hunter Renfro, which, with the expectations that some people are having for him, would make him a dud. That's all. The value on the Raiders here is going to be Derek Carr. He got a massive weapons upgrade with the trade for his former college teammate, Davante Adams. Getting to throw to arguably the best wide receiver in football will absolutely help Carr be one of the more productive. He's going to be much more productive. Maybe not one of the more productive, but he's going to be more productive in fantasy football. I'm telling you, 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns kind of feels like a lock for Derek Carr. Moving along to the Chiefs. We're getting there. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. We're going to make it through the entire AFC, 48 players. Holy shit. The Chiefs, the stud, is Travis Kelce. We already know he's a stud. And now he's no longer competing with Tyreek Hill for targets. Plain and simple, no-brainer. Let's move along. The dud, this one's going to surprise you, especially if you follow me along with my rookie content throughout the offseason. My dud's going to be Sky Moore. And I love Sky Moore. I'll take him in the first round of a dynasty rookie draft all day long. However, he's being drafted a bit too high in seasonal leagues for a rookie coming out of Western Michigan. That's it. He may start the season as the fourth option in the passing game. Even Justin Watson is making some noise in training camp and preseason. And even with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, it's going to be, if he starts as the wide receiver 4, that's tough to overcome. It's tough to overcome. This might be a second half of the season breakout or a second year breakout for Sky Moore. The value is going to be Juju. Juju Smith-Schuster, he just got a massive quarterback upgrade. And not only that, the Chiefs are number 1 in vacated targets with 360, and they're number 4 in vacated air yards, according to Player Profiler. He'll likely finish second on the team in targets. In a Patrick Mahomes offense, I mean, why wouldn't you want that guy on your fantasy team? I'm drafting Juju. In the AFC South, from the AFC West to the AFC South, the stud on the Colts, another one that if you follow me at all, you already know who I'm going to talk about. It's Michael Pittman. This guy is good. He is good. So good that he ranked number 4 in playerprofiler.com's route win rate metric, meaning only 3 receivers in the NFL, 3 guys, beat their coverage last year at a higher rate than Michael Pittman. Over the last 6 weeks of the season, Pittman commanded a massive 31% target share as he emerged as the true alpha in the passing game. With T.Y. Hilton gone, there are absolutely 0 threats to that target share on their roster. And now he gets a quarterback upgrade to Matt Ryan. Where the upgrade to Ryan really comes into play is the offense will be able to move at a faster pace, and they're going to be more efficient, meaning more plays and more high-value opportunities. And that includes in the red zone, where the 6'4", 223-pound beast, Michael Pittman, is going to use his contested catch ability to dominate and perhaps even score double-digit touchdowns. So the dud on the Colts is going to be Alec Pierce. That's another one that if you follow me at all, you already know. Alec Pierce over Sky Moore, even though I also picked Sky Moore as my dud for the Chiefs. They're not in the same atmosphere at all. Alec Pierce over Sky Moore was one of the biggest debacles of the entire NFL draft. Like, what the fuck were you thinking, Colts? This is a guy who had a 25% dominator rating in college, and he averaged less than 4 receptions per game in 2021. He's not a great route runner. He's not great after the catch either. I'm staying away from Alec Pierce in Dynasty and definitely staying away from him in seasonal leagues. The value on the Colts is Paris Campbell. He'll always have a place in my heart. I always will love me some Paris Campbell. He had an excellent profile coming out of Ohio State. He's an excellent athlete who's just run into some bad injury luck to start his career. I'm still convinced that if he can stay healthy, he's got a 1,000-yard season in him. So I'm still taking a little bit of Paris Campbell at the end of my drafts, especially on Underdog, promo code yards per. On the Texans, we're almost done, guys. We're almost done. On the Texans, my stud is going to be Brandon Cooks. This guy is always underrated. Always. Every year, every single year, Brandon Cooks is underrated. And yet he produces every single season. In fact, he's gone over 1,000 yards in 6 of his 7 seasons. That includes last year when he was top 15 in deep targets. He was top 10 in both target share and air yards, according to Player Profiler. There's some worry. I know there's some worry in the fantasy community about how he's going to hold up with Davis Mills at quarterback. However, in 9 games that the two played together last year, Cook averaged over 16 fantasy points per game. He is a stud. The dud on the Texans is going to be Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack has been drafted ahead of rookie Damien Pierce pretty much all summer. That's finally changing as the rest of the fantasy universe has learned about how good Damien Pierce is. I don't think Mack is going away completely, but the days of touting him as a late round sleeper, for those who were, those days are over. The value on the Texans is going to be Brevin Jordan. Brevin Jordan scored as a tight end 1 in 4 of his 9 games over the second half of his rookie season. And yet, he's hardly mentioned among the late round tight end sleepers at his position. It's not crazy to think that Davis Mills takes a step forward in the second season in this Texans offense, and that this offense is better than it's being projected as. At wide receiver, Houston has Cooks and Nico Collins on the perimeter, and they really don't have anyone who's going to command targets from the slot. So that opens up an opportunity in the middle of the field for Brevin Jordan. It's not hard to imagine a world where he finishes second on the team in targets and even leads them in red zone looks. So let's go to the Jaguars. Stud's going to be Travis Etienne. He's back healthy and he's lighting up training camp. He was one of the most productive college running backs that we've seen over the last decade. He had back-to-back seasons with over 1,600 rushing yards during his time at Clemson, with a whopping 78 career touchdowns. He was incredible as a pass catcher too, with 102 receptions during his career at Clemson. The Jaguars have upgraded the offense this offseason to give Etienne and his former Clemson teammate, Trevor Lawrence, every opportunity to thrive in their second season. They brought in a respectable coaching staff. They spent up big in free agency to improve the weapons, and they upgraded the offensive line. We can easily project 200 carries and more than 50 receptions. And honestly, that feels like his floor. Etienne's upside is the full Austin Eckler role, 210 carries, 90 targets, double-digit touchdowns. That is a league winner. And you can get him in the 4th round. The dud's Evan Ingram. The dud is Evan Ingram. Do I really have to say much here? It's Evan Ingram. I mean, it's Evan Ingram. The argument in his favor is that the Jaguars don't exactly have a fierce group of target hogs, and Ingram could end up commanding a decent target share. But didn't he just come from a similar situation with the Giants? And he flamed out with them. I expect he'll do the same in Jacksonville. The value with the Jaguars is Zay Jones. Jones emerged as quite productive at the end of last season with the Raiders. He averaged 8 targets per game over the last 8 weeks, which included 5 double-digit fantasy performances. He capped it off with 5 receptions for 61 yards and a score in Vegas' playoff loss to the Bengals. It was enough to land a new 3-year, $24 million deal with the Jaguars that included $14 million in guaranteed money. A deal like that indicates to me that the team has a plan to use him. The projected wide receiver 1, Christian Kirk, has never had a 1,000-yard season in 4 years in the NFL. After that, it's a 32-year-old Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, and Laquan Treadwell. Jones has a real shot at 80-plus targets in what is expected to be a much-improved offense. Jones is not necessarily the guy you want to grab in your home leagues, maybe, but in deep formats or in best ball, he has an excellent chance at significantly outproducing his ADP. All right, last team. We got it. We're almost there. Stretch run. Last team is the Titans. The stud is Derrick Henry. There's a reason they call him King Henry. He's an absolute beast. Healthy, Derrick Henry is the most dominant runner in football. And plus, there's really no other candidates on that team that could qualify as a stud. So, easily, the stud on the Titans is Derrick Henry. The dud, The dud, this one kind of pains me a little bit. The dud is going to be Treylon Burks. Similar to what I said with Henry, there's really no one else with high enough expectations that I could really put as a dud here. Because honestly, I actually love Treylon Burks. I really do. He absolutely pops in our rookie scouting database at yards per fantasy. I'm certainly not ready to change my stance on him from a dynasty perspective, at least, before he even takes a regular season snap. However, it's impossible to ignore the constant flow of negative reports coming out of Titans training camp. I don't think he's going to be a bust in the NFL, but a slow start is possible. So I think that qualifies him as the dud here. And we're going to wrap it up with the value for the Titans is going to be Mr. Julius Chestnut. There has been a lot of positive reports out of Titans training camp on Chestnut. This undrafted rookie, even going back to the spring, we were getting positive reports about Julius Chestnut. He was on our radar as an intriguing prospect before the NFL draft, so it's not surprising that he's performing well. And if he locks down the number 2 job behind Derrick Henry, he could prove to be an absolute steal. If Henry suffers another injury, which is certainly possible, given his workload and his age, everyone's going to be rushing to the waiver wire to pick up Julius Chestnut. Just get ahead of the game and draft him. Just get ahead of the game and draft him. But that's it. We made it. We got through the entire AFC. We did it. We did it. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. And we'll go through the NFC. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to go through the NFC. And in the meantime, check out everything we've got going on at yardsperfantasy.com. Check out the draft kit, the rankings, everything we're doing to help you dominate your drafts. It's all free. It's all free. Mind-blowing. But if you really, really insist on supporting the Yards Per Fantasy brand, supporting myself, supporting everyone on our team who is working incredibly hard, putting out content, doing stuff behind the scenes. Just so much is going on at Yards Per Fantasy. There's so many people I could list, especially my guy, Matt Flowers, absolute workhorse in the fantasy industry. Doesn't get nearly enough credit for what he does. You can support us on Patreon. We just unrolled our Patreon for the first time. Just go to patreon.com/yardsperfantasy. Support us. There's some cool stuff we're going to do on there to reward our patrons. So check that out. Everything we're doing at Yards Per Fantasy. Thank you all. See you next week.